If you were no longer affected by the judgment of others and you stopped judging yourself, would you make different choices? Everyone has the potency to make inspired choices. Get ready to listen, share, and experience the creativity that is you. Now, here's the host of Inspired Choices Radio Show, Possibilities Coach, Christine McIver.
Hello, hello, hello. How are you, my friends? Yes, this is Christine McIver, and you are joining me tonight, today, whenever it is, on the Inspired Choices Radio Show here on the Inspired Choices Network. And what is this radio show all about? This radio show is about looking at topics and really diving deep into creating something inspiring by your choice. So one of the things that I absolutely know is every single solitary thing that has ever happened, quote unquote, happened to you, or every single solitary thing that you've ever chosen has been by you. Nothing happens to you. Even some of the most destructive things in the world, there is some part in your world that you have chosen to be part of that. And some people might get really mad at that, and that's okay. But what I do know is looking at my life and looking at all the crazy things that happened to me, I had a part in it. And so even if we change even one small thing in our part with something, we can shift the entire projection of the entire direction of an event, okay? It's like if you move, if you're drawing a pencil or you're making a line, right, through, let's say you have a huge open field and you just move like, an eighth of an inch to the right with each step that you take. It's not much of a change, but by the time you get, 10 feet out, you will have moved a humongous amount. You will have changed the direction. You will have changed the angle of that creation. That is the exact same thing for every solitary thing in our lives. And just by you being present with it, just by you being willing to look at all of your creations, that also begins to change it. I was listening to a great audio today when I was driving called The Divine Matrix by Greg Braden. And when you're driving and you're thinking about a lot of things, but you kind of hear this in the background, the one thing that popped up was information where he said when we even just look at the creation, a molecule, so every molecule has energy, and when we look at one molecule, just by looking at it, our energy of looking at that molecule changes that molecule. Isn't that fascinating? Like, I've just been thinking about that. It's just been right there in front of me all day ever since I heard that. And it's like, just looking at something can change it. Like, oh my gosh. Now, if you put consciousness to it, not only do you look at something, but you put consciousness to it, you begin to acknowledge it, then you bring in your choice. Wow. Like, really? How can we not create an amazing life and change and expand everything that we desire? So that's what this radio show is about. It's really about inviting you in to new possibilities that I absolutely know together we can really change things. We can really expand things. I started in radio many, many years ago, and I love doing radio. I love the interaction from each and every one of you, the comments, the questions, all of the people that come and play in the chat room, and the emails that I receive afterwards. It's uplifting to me as we have this conversation, whether it's live or we have it globally through the internet. Like, how amazing that we have the internet, that we can communicate. But it's fascinating what all of us together, when we begin to look at these things, how we can contribute to creating something even greater. So tonight's radio show is called Motivated by Fear or Desire? Which one? Before we jump in, I want to tell you a little bit about me. You know about my radio show. So I am a business possibilities crazy lady coach. I love to work with individuals one-on-one, whether it's in regards to starting a business, whether it's regards to a relationship, perhaps it's about confidence. Maybe you're struggling with someone who has committed suicide. Maybe you're struggling with parenting. Maybe you desire to create more in your life with possibly a new career. Whatever it is, I love to dive in deep to really unpack what's not working and expand into the possibilities. One of my favorite things to do is definitely to work with individuals in business. Whether you've had a business for many years or you're just beginning a business, I love to dive into all of the minutiae, all of the aspects of business, how to work a business both in person and how to do business with online opportunities, social media, websites, you name it. It really lights me up a great deal, and I can see things very quickly and easily, and I love to teach people how to truly have pleasure with business. So those are some of the things that I do. I am a business owner. The owner of Inspired Choices, Inc. I'm also the creator, founder, and CEO of Inspired Choices Network. It's been such a pleasure over these last few years creating this platform with amazing hosts all over the world. And the team that I have to work with is just fantastic. I mean, it really, truly is a team. We have so much fun looking at how else we can bring voices to the world. And as well as I work with people and their bodies. If that's something that you're in the local area and you would like to meet with me, I do work with bodies from a healing perspective as well. So I've got a lot of different things that I do. I love doing lots of different things. It keeps me motivated, so that's one of the things for me. And you can connect with me at inspiredchoices.ca or send me an email, Christine@inspiredchoices.ca, where I always give someone a complimentary 30-minute session to see what would actually work for them and to see if I could be a contribution to them. So let's dive into tonight's show. Are you motivated by fear or desire? Do you actually know what your desires are? And here's another question. Have you given fear motivation a bad rap? It was really cool when this topic popped up and I started to look at and receive downloads about the topic. That last one surprised me and made me giggle at the same time. So first of all, let's dive into the piece about being motivated. So to be motivated is to move into action, right? So when you are looking at what you desire to do in your life, what you desire to have in your life, how you like to create your world, the first thing is to look at motivation. Now, motivation, the first word is motivate, right? The root of motivation is motivate, and it means, there's not a lot of clear definitions of motivate, but it really is inner or social stimulus for action. And that was actually something from 1854. So it's inner or social action, okay? Inner or social stimulus for action. So motivation is not necessarily about something outside of you, right? So intrinsic motivation is something, that's what motivation is. It really comes from within. Now, most of us, inspiration, so to be inspired, all right, to be inspired is to have your spirit that's within you really lead the way. That's what inspiration is to be inspired, is to have your spirit within you lead your way. Really speak to you and listen to what is actually within you. And when you are inspired, your motivation is coming from within. Now, most people are looking to external sources to become motivated. But that's not what motivated is, all right? Most people are looking to something else. They're looking to someone else. And that's, my friends, that's where the fear kicks in. That's where fear takes over to motivate you. Actually, it's not motivating you. It's actually kicking your ass into gear, all right? Because motivation is about something within you. Now, a social stimulus, right? The social stimulus, you might see someone, maybe they created I can't even think of the word. They created some event to raise money. So they're motivated within themselves to contribute in some big way, right? So that for them is an intrinsic motivation. Now, the social stimulus might be, oh, that's a really good idea, or we should be doing that as well. Now, anytime that energy or those words of should come up, what that is actually saying to you, my friends, is you have some kind of guilt or judgment attached to what someone else is doing. So perhaps you've judged yourself that you don't give back, or perhaps you've judged yourself that you don't contribute in the world, all right? That right there, again, that's the external, that's the social stimulus that can actually kick in and have you choose from the space of judgment and or fear. So I really wanted to, in this first segment, really, pull apart what the differences are, because I think that it's extremely important that if you would like to be motivated, to know that comes from within you, that is not about someone outside of you, okay? So let me give you another example, and then we're going to go to our first break. So if you have children and your children are starving, you are going to be kicked in the butt from a place of fear to get a job, to earn money, to get food. Or you might be, kicked in the butt to steal to get money to feed your children, all right? That is an external source that is triggering you into action. Now, if you have children and having children was one of your desires, and actually having your children be healthy, that's an intrinsic motivation, okay? So that is a motivation to get a job, to earn money, to feed your children, all right? So there is a difference. Now, we can go back and forth between the external and the internal, right? So you're going along in your life and the money's coming in and you're very happy that you're hitting some of your targets, and one of your desires is to be able to feed your children well, and that's going along great. And then perhaps something occurs in your life, perhaps you lose your job or something financially really kicks in a negative way. So there's some kind of large impact on your finances, and then suddenly you've got an external motivation or a fear. So I hope everyone really gets how these internal and externals work. Now let me tell you something. I'm going to give you a little teaser before we go to break. If one of your desires is to fulfill your desires, and one of those desires is actually to have a great abundance of joy and laughter and finances and pleasure in your life, motivation is the key, my friend. The internal motivation is the key. All right, so we're going to go to our first break of the show. When we get back, we're going to dive in and we're going to talk about desires, and then we're going to dive into talking about fear, all right? Fear gets a really bad rap, and I really want to talk about how fear can be actually a really cool contribution if you're willing to play with it. So you're listening to myself, Christine McIver, on the Inspired Choices radio show here on the Inspired Choices Network. Stay tuned, my friends. We'll be right back.
Many of us make choices in our lives based on the past or what others think. What would our lives be like if we made choices based on what we desire in this moment? By tuning in to Inspired Choices radio show with Possibilities Coach Christine McIver, you'll receive tools and inspiration you can use to do just that. You are an infinite being with infinite choices. Are you ready to create the life and living you truly desire? Listen for Inspired Choices radio show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is Inspired Choices radio show with Possibilities Coach Christine McIver. To participate in the program, call in the U.S. 815-880-8255. In Canada, 613-800-8736, or Skype us at Inspired Choices Network. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email by sending to Christine@InspiredChoices.ca. Now, back to the program.
Hi, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me tonight and sticking around. We have jumped into the conversation tonight. I would love to take your questions, your comments. Come on over to InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can join the chat room just on the menu bar. Come on in. You can ask questions, or you can call in the U.S., 815-880-8255, Canada, 613-800-8736. Now, if you have a question and you're just not sure whether you're being motivated by internal or external, I would love to play with you on that to really see if we can get to it, because you will actually create differently from internal and external, okay? All right, so before we went to the show, we were talking about the internal and the external motivation, the intrinsic motivation or the social cues that we often make our choices by, all right, which are often fear. So as I said, I wanted to talk about desire. So tell me something. Have you ever looked at the word desire? Have you ever looked at what it means to have a desire? Okay, so here's the definitions. The noun definition is a craving or yearning, an emotion directed toward attainment or possession of an object, sensual appetite, physical desire, or lust. Now, how does it get any better than that? The verb is to wish or long for, express a wish to obtain. Now, the word wish alone, it's kind of wishy-washy, right? To wish for something is to kind of, there's an energy in that of I hope, but I don't really believe, right? And so we really want to come from that space of desire as far as the yearning, the craving, something you would like to obtain. And a desire does not necessarily mean something to possess, as in to a desire to take from someone else. And it doesn't necessarily mean a physical object, Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean something that, like, it doesn't have to be money or a house. It can be you have a desire to be more joyful. It can be you have a desire to enjoy your life. You have a desire to have more play in your life. Your desires, there's no limit on desires. There's no limit on what you can desire. There's no limit on how much you should or should not desire. So let me ask you, my friend, have you been limiting your desires so that some of them would finally come true? All right. And it's so funny because suddenly my voice is starting to crack. Wow. So what are we breaking open here? This is very, very cool. It's really interesting to me. I last year did a class. It was 100 days. It called Up Your Ask, and I'm going to be doing it again very, very soon. And I know everybody's been waiting for the second round of it, and I've got to get my ducks in a row, and I am intrinsically motivated now, not externally by everybody else's desire, to actually bring the 100 days of Up Your Ask edition 2 to the surface. But a lot of people in that, when we were doing this, the whole premise was 10 asks a day for 100 days in a row. And the whole premise of that was to really get into that energy of asking, because we do know that the universal law is ask and you shall receive. But here's the crux of it. You have to be in your knowing that, one, abundance is your birthright, and two, there's no limit on your asks. But so many people in that group, they would be asking for basically 10 things, and they would ask for those same 10 things every day because they were afraid that they were asking too much. They were afraid that if they asked too much, then they wouldn't get what they actually desire. Well, that's not true. It's absolutely not true. There is no limitation in the universe. And if you would like evidence of that, go into the woods, go into nature, walk down a street that has trees, and tell me if one tree is limited by the amount of leaves that are on the next tree. All right? It's not. Nature shows us time and time and time again that there is no limitations. There is no maximum in our desires, in creation, or in pleasure. So it's very important that you get to this space. If you have some blocks, you have some belief systems that are stopping you regarding desire, I would really love for you to begin to look at that so that you can start to get more of your desires into your visual, right? So a lot of people will actually cut off desires so that they can finally get something. All right, so that's number one. So you want to take a look at that. We're not going to dive deep into all of those limitations tonight, but I do want you to look at that. So now let's talk about desires. Do you know what you desire? Have you gotten clear about what you desire? Not about what, your parents desire for you, or what your spouse desires for you, what your lover desires for you, what your kids desire for you, what you desire for your kids. Really? Let's talk about you. What do you desire? Have you actually sat in a space of peace and quiet and really spent some time at looking at what it is that you deeply desire within? Here's something that will help you. If this isn't something that you have done on a very, very deep level, here is a exercise that you can do. Write this question out. If I die tomorrow, will I have accomplished all of my desires? And if you get a no, start asking, what are those desires that are on my heart that I absolutely must accomplish before I leave this earth? Ask yourself that from a very deep, centered space. You know, it's sometimes this is very difficult work. Sometimes this can be a very emotional place to start asking that about your desires. Because sometimes when I ask people, what do you desire? Well, I desire to have a new car, and I desire to, have, really nice wardrobe, and and it's like, that's cool. You can have all those desires, but what's deeper? What's deeper under there? When you get to those deep desires and you really start to cultivate your focus and your deliberate choices based on those deep desires, your whole life begins to change. Your whole life begins to change, because those desires are something that honestly, if tomorrow was your last day on earth, you would be regretful that you didn't reach forward and fulfill that desire. I can tell you, speaking on the radio was one of those desires for me. It was a deep, intrinsic desire that when I was asked if I would like to have a radio show, every molecule of my body was screaming yes. And it actually even surprised me how much it was screaming yes. It kind of, shook me back a little bit. I'm like, oh my God. And I knew that energy within my body. I knew that if I didn't say yes to that, I was going to be deeply regretful. And I didn't even completely understand it. I hope that makes sense. But those deep desires, when we start to cultivate those deep desires are laid on your heart. And they actually move you forward in a direction to create more joy, to create more pleasure, to have more abundance in this world. Okay? Those deep, deep desires, they are actually the intrinsic motivation that create what it is that you really can have and be in this world. So my friends, are you willing to dive deep into your desires, to take a deep, deep dive and really be vulnerable with yourself? Even if you think somewhere in your mind, I can never have that. Even if you start to go into a very deep emotional place around your belief system about lack, would you be willing to start doing it? Because I'm telling you, I am an example of someone who had some very deep desires on her heart. And when I would start to think about them, I didn't even want to write them down, to tell you the truth, because I would start to cry. I would start to get really emotional because I had some kind of lack, some kind of less than belief that I wasn't going to be able to cultivate them. And when I got over myself, when I said, you know what, this is bullshit. Like, this is not changing it. Me trying to ignore it or push them away is actually not changing it. And when you try to do that, don't they get louder? Don't those desires start to scream? And don't you, when you buy a blue car, don't you see everybody has a blue car? Well, when you have these deep desires, don't you see everybody that's actually cultivating what you desire? Don't you actually see them having it? It's the same thing, right? So avoiding your desires will only create more desire, deeper ache within your body and your being to have them. So my challenge to you, my friends, is as we go to break, I want you to ask yourself, am I now willing to dive deep into my desires? Am I now willing to dive deep into my desires? All you need is the willingness, my friends. You don't need the house. Just your willingness can begin to shift it and begin to drop off the lies around it. Because if you have a desire on your heart, I am going to tell you 100%, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, you have a desire on your heart, it can be fulfilled. It can be, but the first step is your willingness to acknowledge it and to start to really connect with it. Okay, we're going to go to our second break. You are listening to Inspired Choices Radio Show with myself, Christine McIver, here on the Inspired Choices Network. When we get back, we're going to dive into the next aspect of this conversation about fear. Stay tuned, my friends. We'll be right back.
Many of us make choices in our lives based on the past or what others think. What would our lives be like if we made choices based on what we desire in this moment? By tuning in to Inspired Choices Radio Show with Possibilities Coach Christine McIver, you'll receive tools and inspiration you can use to do just that. You are an infinite being with infinite choices. Are you ready to create the life and living you truly desire? Listen for Inspired Choices Radio Show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is Inspired Choices Radio Show with Possibilities Coach Christine McIver. To participate in the program, call in the U.S. 815-880-8255. In Canada, 613-800-8736, or Skype us at Inspired Choices Network. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email by sending to Christine@InspiredChoices.ca. Now, back to the program.
All right, my friends, thank you so much for sticking around. Tonight we are talking about motivation. What motivates you, fear or desire? Before we jump back into the conversation, and if you're just joining, I really want to encourage you to go back and listen to the beginning of this, because what was really sweet is how each of these things unfold, and they really move you into a more easeful, playful way to create your desires and to have you motivate. You know, one of the things that I used to do is I was motivated through procrastination. Procrastinate, and then get to the 11th hour, and then was motivated by fear to accomplish something. That was the thing that actually got me moving. How many of us do that? We do everything at the last minute. You know, it's fun sometimes, but truthfully, it can be very, very difficult on your body. Your adrenal glands can go into overload if that is something that you're doing time and time again. And after a while, it really can become very exhausting, really emotionally exhausting, because you're not in the pleasure of the creation, and you miss out on the pleasure of a creation when you're pushing yourself in that direction, when you're choosing from that aspect. So before we jump back in, though, I just want to tell you I've got 3 big creations coming up. I don't have all the dates booked as yet, but I wanted to put that out there, and my team and I are going to be looking at this over the next week. So the first creation is called Embracing Change. That is going to be a Zoom call series. It's going to be 4 calls that you'll be able to join, get the audio, video, and a PDF, all about embracing change. The second one is called Manipulation for Masterful Consciousness. That's also going to be a Zoom call series. That's going to be 3 calls. And we're going to be starting that in August the 23rd, actually. And then the third one is Season 2 of Up Your Ask. And what's going to come with that is actually going to be a workbook. So, my friends, stick around. We are creating, and these are all intrinsic creations for myself. So I'm very excited that is where I am at, and I want to invite you into more of your intrinsic creations, whether it's intrinsically creating a relationship, intrinsically create business, or intrinsically creating money, whatever it is for you. When it comes from within, there's so much pleasure in there, and you get to enjoy the process, not from the space of fear. And how can fear actually be a contribution? So there's a lot of acronyms out there for fear. False evidence appearing real is the one that comes to my mind. Oftentimes, fear is something that we think is going to happen, that we expect is going to happen, we often project is going to happen. And when we're in that energy of fear and we stay there long enough and we create from that space repeatedly again and again, we do actually bring it into fruition. So, yeah, it's not real until you make it real, and you make it real by constantly focusing on it. Does that make sense, my friends? So, fear, motivating from fear, being motivated from the space of fear, we are, you've heard about fight or flight, right? Fight or flight is the survival technique that our brain contributes to us. Our brain has this fight or flight, and the fear in there is we are expecting something to happen. That is a really great thing to have. All right, if you are suddenly walking down the street and you're crossing the street and there's somebody that is speeding, crazily speeding down the street, your fight or flight, your fear of getting killed will actually keep you alive. That's a great thing. We want to have that within us. Now, creation in your life, creating your entire life includes everything. And so fear, what if you didn't actually kick fear out the door? What if you actually used fear to your advantage? Right? What if you actually started to see fear as a contribution in your world instead of something that's wrong or bad? Okay? Now, I am not saying that operating from fear all the time is actually going to be comfortable. It's not. It's going to get overwhelming for you after a while, as I said. But there is nothing wrong with fear. It's what you do on the other side of fear that really does begin to expand what you desire. Okay, so fear can be a benefit in a life or death situation. Fear can also be a contribution in your creations. So if you fear something happening in your world and it actually motivates you when you're otherwise not taking action, if it actually moves you into action, just the action itself starts to change the energy, starts to change the possibilities of your creation. So it does get you moving, all right? Sometimes that's the only way some people will move is from the space of fear. If, however, you desire more in your world and you notice that the only time you're actually motivated is from that space of fear, that is where you want to start to dive into that exercise I was talking about with desire. But fear, the place of fear, can absolutely point to, oh, there's something more here for me. Don't throw fear out the window. When this energy of fear comes up, when you actually choose from the space of fear, those energies are a contrast to what it is that you desire. It's just your body and being showing you the opposite of what you desire. As I said before, many of us will not get down dirty with our desires. So what's one way that wakes us up? One way that wakes us up and gets us into action is fear. Fear has got many of people through school. Fear has got many of people through paying bills. Fear has got many people through a lot of creation. It's not a bad thing. So stop giving fear a bad rap. Use fear. use fear as a signpost on your journey to there is something else. What is the opposite of this fear? What is the opposite of this fear? What is it that I desire that's the opposite of this fear? And that's where you can start to really dig into that more and more and more. Okay, so we have a question in the chat room. If we are aware of the cars, do we require fear to not be killed? Well, that's a great question. I'm going to say for most people, they will play with it. They'll like, oh, like I see the cars and yeah, I'm probably not going to get killed. Like it's probably not a big deal. Like they'll do this thing back and forth and they may not take action fast enough, right? They may, but I would say most times it's actually the fear that will kick them forward, all right? And it's the fear that will actually save their ass when that car is speeding at them, all right? So if you are aware of things, you can come out of that energy of fear for sure, and you can go into what is it I desire here? So when you are in this space of fear, look at times in your life when you were operating from the space of fear. Look at the times where fear was actually the thing that kept you alive. Look at the times in your life where fear actually did feed your family, where fear actually had you accomplish things you never thought you would accomplish. I can remember when I first moved out on my own, my marriage had come to a close, and I had 2 children. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any money. I actually, I was living in rent-geared to income housing, and my rent was $30 a month. So you know how much money I was probably bringing in, which was little to none, I'll tell you. And it was through fear that I kicked in determination. And it was through that fear of staying in that stuck place and actually having to go to the food bank on my birthday that year. I'll never forget that as long as I live. That was the most horrific time for me that day. I just remember driving away in tears thinking, how in God's name did I get here? And the fear that would happen again, that I would experience that again, that kicked me in to gear, my friends. And doing that, allowing the fear to kick my ass forward, had me in less than a year and a half after that. No, I think it might have even been less. No, it was about a year and a half after that I had paid off all of my expenses and saved for a down payment on a house, and I was able to buy my own house. And that's going from having only enough income to pay $30 a month rent. So can you see how that actually created for me? Fear actually was a servant that created for me. Now, do I want to always get to that space where fear is the only place I'm operating from? No, because what you're doing is when you're operating from fear, you are usually only accomplishing the surface things that you need, right? Food, shelter, safety. You're not getting to your deep desires. So when you get to that space in your life where it's time to leave your body and you look at your life, you will have regret if all you've ever done was been motivated by fear. Again, we don't need to kick fear out of our lives. Use it as a signpost of what's the contrast here. What is it that I desire? And when you're working on things, let's say you're a business owner and you're working on creations and you're creating, and said suddenly some kind of fear pops up again. Oh, it's great because it's just helping you to dive deeper into your desires, to really align yourself with the energy of possibilities, with the energy of knowing you can have what you deeply desire. So you want to keep utilizing fear, not throwing it away and not trying to pretend it's not there. Because if fear is there and you try to pretend it's not there, just like anything, it will get louder in your world. Be willing to acknowledge it, be willing to look at it, and be willing to use it to your advantage to move you deeper, closer, more in alignment with your desires. So we're up for our last break of the show. And when we get back, we're going to wrap this all up. My friends, so glad you're sticking with me tonight. Again, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat room, or you're certainly welcome to call in. Or always, you're welcome. If you're listening in the replay, please do send me an email. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Christine@inspiredchoices.ca. So stick around. We'll be back right after this short commercial break.
Many of us make choices in our lives based on the past or what others think. What would our lives be like if we made choices based on what we desire in this moment? By tuning into Inspired Choices radio show with Possibilities Coach Christine McIver, you'll receive tools and inspiration you can use to do just that. You are an infinite being with infinite choices. Are you ready to create the life and living you truly desire? Listen for Inspired Choices radio show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is Inspired Choices radio show with Possibilities Coach Christine McIver. To participate in the program, call in the U.S. 815-880-8255. In Canada, 613-800-8736, or Skype us at Inspired Choices Network. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email by sending to Christine@InspiredChoices.ca. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my friends. Thank you so much for joining tonight. We are talking about motivation. How are you motivated? Are you motivated by fear or by desire? So what if you really got super clear about your desires and you started to really dive into those and you started to choose from that space, and you saw when fear came up, and that fear was your tool to actually have more of your desires. Is that something that you're willing to really cultivate? There's so many people in the world that I talk to all of the time that are talking about how sad they are, how disappointed they are, how they so much want to have more, that, how you ask somebody, how are you? Oh, well, this is going on and that's going on, and I don't have this and I don't have that, and da-da-da-da. And there's so friggin' much of this in the world. What if you really started to shift gears, just, shift that step, an eighth of an inch to the right in your focus, and you started to truly come at your life from the energy of desire? There is always going to be people and places and things that are coming from that space of frustration or anger or lack. I don't think that's ever going to go away, at least not in our lifetime. But you know what? You actually choosing to be in your space of desire, you actually choosing to operate from desire and staying focused on what you know is possible and asking questions and using tools, you choosing to do that, you're going to change your life, and you are going to impact those around you and have a ripple effect in the world. What you do matters. What you do matters to not only your life, but also to the rest of the world. Do you get that? Do you get how much your choices really do have such a contribution in the world? You are not operating in a tunnel. You are not by yourself. Your choices, your actions, they're being seen. I used to think that nobody saw me. I used to think that nobody was paying attention to me. I used to think that I was basically invisible to the world. And honestly, up until about 5 years ago, I just started to realize that people were seeing me, that people were hearing me, that they were watching what I was doing. Somebody is watching you. Not from a voyeuristic perspective, from a stalking perspective. People are seeing what you're doing. People are admiring. There is somebody out there, even if it's just one person. They are out there and they are admiring you. And they are watching what you are doing in the world. They are watching what you are creating. You are inspiring others. Here's my question. Are you inspiring you? Are you inspiring yourself with your choices? Are you inspiring yourself in creating your world? Do you ever make a choice that takes your breath away, that makes you with giggle and laugh and just have an explosion of joy, that you just cannot believe you made that choice and yet fills you with so much pleasure and joy? Have you ever made that choice? Those choices are phenomenal. Those choices change your world. I've made some of those choices that have taken my own breath away. And at times I thought, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to breathe. This is just too much. And yet when I just started to let go and I went with it, oh my gosh, it changes everything. That's you expanding into your world. So you see how fear and desire can expand your world. Fear and desire can move you forward. Nobody was ever motivated to, build an amazing building or, dig a road through rock by just, this is just my day to day. No, there's something deep within them. There's an intrinsic motivation, or there's a fear that has contributed to them creating something. What if we stopped judging how we're doing it and we started to make some choices and then allowed ourselves to see where it's coming from desire or fear, and then use the tools I've talked about in this show to change it and expand it even more from that deep, deep place of desire. I wonder, truthfully, what your world would be like if you actually were willing to look at that. My friends, I am so glad that we had this time to talk and contribute. I'm grateful for all of the comments and contributions in the chat room. My amazing producer, Melitza, she's been in there with me throughout the whole show. It's so much fun to have somebody to work with and to have somebody that's supporting you throughout your creations. So we're wrapping tonight's show up. Next week we'll have another Inspired Choices radio show. I'm not sure what the topic's going to be yet. If you've got some topics you would like me to consider, please feel free to email me, and we can certainly dive deep into that. What I'd just like for you to remember throughout this next week is you really do have the power in your life to make the choices that change your world, that create your world. You have the power. Nobody else has power over you. They truly don't. Even if you're a child and you're still living at home, your parents do not have the power over your joy. Your parents do not have the power over how you start to create your world. That is your choice. It is always your choice, my friends. So I would love to invite you back next week. I would love to hear from you, and I would love for you to check in next week, because we definitely will have all of those dates for those events that are going to be coming up, and they're going to be at some wildly amazing prices. So until we meet again, I want you to remember that you are entitled to every desire that you have ever had, and remember, you can always make another choice. Until next time, my friends, take good care.
Thank you for choosing to listen to Inspired Choices Radio Show. Christine McIver will return next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by making the choices that bring you all that you desire.